We all have self-limiting beliefs that are wrong, but that limit us. Like, I wanted to be an artist from the time I was like 11 or 12 years old. And I got out in the world to see all these people who were much more talented than I was. I just came to the realization that the dream that I had, that's never going to happen because I'm just not talented enough. I believed that so much that I actually gave up on the dream and I joined the Toronto Police Force. Now, fast forward now, right? I'm in my 26th year of a full-time artist, and I realized I just needed to add yet to the end of that sentence. I wasn't talented enough yet. Talent's not something you have or don't have. It's something you build. As soon as I kind of came across the idea of the growth mindset, first of all, I thought, I don't really believe this. But then a little voice in the back of my head just thought, well, what if it's true? What if I actually could become talented enough to actually make a living from my art? You have to be okay with the uncertainty because a lot of the times the choices you're making, they're not the logical, safe choices. And here's the thing that most people, I don't think realize is that...
Tim, I'm super happy to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
I pulled a couple of points that I've seen through your social media, through your research, through your book, and it's really the truths of the mind that are holding us back. So I'm going to kick it right off with an interesting truth number one that I have. You're struggling not because you're untalented, but because you misunderstand growth.
Yep.
Walk me through what that means to you.
Well, it means we all have self-limiting beliefs that are wrong, but that limit us. And for me, the classic one was like, I wanted to be an artist from the time I was like 11 or 12 years old. I took commercial art in high school, took graphic design in college, and then I got out in the world to see all these people who were much more talented than I was. And I just came to the realization that the dream that I had, which was to be an illustrator back then, that's never going to happen because I'm just not talented enough. And I believed that so much that I actually gave up on the dream and I joined the Toronto Police Force. Now, fast forward now, right? I'm in my 26th year of a full-time artist. I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I realized I just needed to add yet to the end of that sentence. I wasn't talented enough yet because talent's not something you have or don't have. It's something you build. And I mean, I believe it's the sum total of your skills, knowledge, experience, and creativity. And you can improve on all of them. And your ultimate talent is virtually limitless. And as soon as I kind of came across the idea of the growth mindset, I was in my 30s. And I thought, first of all, I thought, I don't really believe this, right? I don't believe it. Everybody that says they just got there by hard work, I'm sure they had some magic pixie dust sprinkled on them at birth, right? And I don't have that. But then a little voice in the back of my head just thought, well, what if it's true? What if I actually could become talented enough to actually make a living from my art? And I thought, well, I'm going to live my life for the next year as though I believe it were true. And so then I started scheduling my painting time, making sure I painted at least 3 times a week. I started tackling the things that I knew were weaknesses. Like, I didn't know anything about composition, but I knew it was really important. So it's like, okay, I better learn this. And a funny thing happened. By the end of that year, my work had gotten a lot better. Within 3 years, I'd been elected to 2 of our most prestigious national arts associations. And my wife and I were now having the conversation, not if I was going to leave the police force, but when. And in January of 2000, I quit my job, walked away from my pension, and started my life as a full-time artist. And it's last year I had one of my paintings go into King Charles's collection.
That's
So it's,
awesome.
it's kind of like, but it started with me believing I wasn't talented enough. And it wasn't until I actually changed the mindset that my talent wasn't limited. And then, okay, well, let me see how far I can develop it. And I just really believe that. And I believe that for just about anything. You know, it's a little different with sports. You know, if you're 5'2", you're not going to make it to the NBA. But the beautiful thing about art is we're not limited. Even one of my favorite stories is Chuck Close, American artist, one of the most, well, I think probably one of the most brilliant artists of the 20th century. He's very visually impaired. And he creates these breathtaking pieces. He's in the Metropolitan Museum, right? So even someone who's visually impaired could go on and have an amazing art career. And we can pick it up at any time in our life. You know, if you want to be a hockey player, you better be doing certain things by the time you're 19. But I never got serious about my art till I was almost 40. I have one of the ladies in my program. She's the same age as me. She's going to be 65 this year. She started painting 2 years ago. Last year, she made $50,000 from the sale of her art, and it's just like so that whole thing is I love the commercial that's on right now for Ford, and the thing that I love, they don't say that it was Henry Ford that said it. They said a famous man once said,
Yeah,
"Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're
you're right.
absolutely right." But that was actually Henry Ford, and that's the thing, and it's like so the very first thing you have to change is your mindset and the idea that you are not limited, um, by by the skills, competencies, whatever you have now, that you can improve on anything, and that your potential talent is really unlimited. You just have to have the desire, and then you need to know what to do to develop it, right? But
Yeah, it takes the work. I think talent is always like the initial thought. Like we all have something that we're great at
yeah,
that is inside of us. And if it's something we love, then it's even better because to develop it or to work at it isn't work at all. I look back when I went into the financial industry and I had no financial backing. We didn't have I didn't grow up with money. I didn't have people around me that had invested. I really had no clue what that world was like. And I remember gaining confidence as I got into different rooms, not because I knew more about the market than people, because I didn't. I hadn't studied finance to that level. But you know what I studied? My whole life, my unique ability had been relationships. My
yeah,
unique ability had been developing and connecting with people. And what I found was there was a major disconnection in people's feeling in and around money and how they manage their lives, their well-being, their families, and it was either being used as a tool or it was being used as something that was they were working to attain. And so they got this self-limiting belief based around their own self, right? And so my
yeah,
ability to build relationships was something that I leaned into. And I too went on that personal journey, that personal growth journey sometime around my late 20s, early 30s, and it's a game changer because what you recognize is you are right where you're supposed to be. You are sitting at the spot that you're supposed to be at right now. It's what you choose to do
yeah,
now that can take you to the next level. The next one I want to talk on is logical excuses often mask fear.
for sure.
So this is one I know you enjoy talking about, and I
Yeah.
just walk us through this.
Well, because the one thing that I think people don't realize, and talk about traits and things that are required, but to live the fullest life that you can, it takes courage. Because you have to be okay with the uncertainty that comes about, because a lot of the times the choices you're making, they're not the logical, safe choices, right? Like for me to walk away from a job where I was making about $80,000 a year, I had all the benefits, I would have a great pension coming up, to try and make a living as an artist. It's like that's not logical. My father-in-law thought I lost my mind, right? Now he brags about his son, the famous artist, but for a long time he was very unhappy with me. He thought I was putting his
Yeah.
daughter and his grandkids, financial life in jeopardy. But it's like you need that courage to be able to make the choices that don't seem logical. I mean, for me, I was making my best year ever. I made like $280,000 from the sale of my art, and that's really good for an artist. And I sort of walked away from that to really focus more on the teaching, and then almost exclusively on the teaching, to start from nothing there. Not That wasn't a smart decision kind of financially, but it was a decision that I knew that that's really what I wanted to do with my life. It was no longer going to be enough to just crank out more paintings, and make lots of money. It's like I'd already had the ability to impact a few people's lives and change them in a really, really positive way. And I just knew that that was the legacy that I wanted to lead. And the only way I could do it would be to kind of put painting aside for a while and really focus on this other thing. But it wasn't a logical decision. It made no sense whatsoever. But it was like the heart telling me this is what I want to do. And then also just having the growth mindset, knowing, well, I'll be able to learn whatever I need to learn to how to do this, right? And now our my art academy, we started in 2020 and we just passed $600,000 in sales of my online courses just in January. And it's like that's the thing that, but it wasn't a sure thing. I didn't know, right? I was taking a chance. But I also think the thing that's really important is that you have to have the courage that things might fail, but you also need to be smart about taking risks where failure's not gonna take you out of the game. You're gonna be able to get up to play the game again tomorrow. You might
Like
have to
a
pivot.
calculated
Yeah,
risk.
you don't want
Yeah.
to like, when I left the police force, I'd already been really for 3 years had a very strong side hustle going. I'd gotten a bunch of, accreditation. I'd been in a bunch of jury shows. I was getting a lot of portrait commissions. So I had some feedback that, okay, what I was doing, there was a demand for, and I could potentially make a living from it. But I was a detective in the commercial crime unit. I was investigating frauds over $2 million. So I know, okay, I've got a skill set that if this all goes into the ditch, I can get a job in corporate security, right? And then even when I made the move to the teaching, it's like, well, I can always go back to painting if this doesn't work out. But and then there's even, it was funny. My wife said to me, because I made a very public pronouncement on YouTube that I was going to be leaving the painting, or at least putting it mainly aside and focusing on the teaching. And I knew the only way I was going to be able to do that was to create a successful online teaching business. And so that's what I was going to do. And my wife was like, well, what if you fail? What if you don't? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. So I'm on the hook, aren't I? So, and I love doing that, putting myself on the hook where you go, okay, well, now I'm either going to walk the walk or talk the talk. And even if it didn't work out, it's like, well, that's okay. It's like I gave it my shot. Failure, as long as you make sure failures aren't going to be catastrophic, just substitute learning for failure. One of the things is about, I think about life in general, but in being an artist too, is you got to paint a lot of bad paintings before you get to the really good ones. So as I say to my students, people don't get writer's block or painter's block because they're afraid to write. It's because they're afraid to write bad stuff, or they're afraid to paint bad stuff. And I love that hack that writers have, which is the goal is to write 10 crappy pages a day, right? Because they know they're not all going to be crappy. There's going to be
Right.
some gold in there. And yeah, but it's not logical. Logical would have been for me to stay on the police force and just and I would have had a very good life. But so here's something coming
You're
back about what.
misaligned. A lot of times it's just that
Yeah,
misalignment,
yeah,
and we're making excuses of the external world. There's this
yeah,
external excuse why we're not doing something that's inside of us. And I could tell you that in my experience, I remember going to my dad in the garage, and I was going to tell him that I was going to. I had been in. Now I had built my business. It's 15 years. I'm doing very, very well, better than I ever dreamed I would do. My wife and I are going on a couple vacations a year.
yeah,
My kids are doing well. We're helping people. We're building things beyond our regular careers. Like it's a very good life, a
yes,
great life from how I grew up in regards to financial security. And I remember telling my father I was going to go start my own business, and I was leaving the platform I was on, and he just kind of smiled and shook his head at me and looked at me like he had this like it's never enough for you. And I said no, 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 it's not that it's never enough. It's that when you know that you have something more to offer the world and you hold back on it,
yep,
that is worse. And so if I know I can change the industry, or I can change people's lives, or I can help more people, and I sit in comfort wasting my life away
yep,
just because I'm more successful than I thought I could be when I was 12 or 15 years old with zero ability to think big enough.
yep.
That is not good. And
No, and
so it was the same thing.
here's why that's really important too, because it's not just about the financial or whatever, right? I'm in 2019, I almost died twice. I had massive issues with my thyroid, but twice I was lying in the gurney in the hospital. My wife was there. We weren't sure if I was going to be there 5 or 10 minutes from then. So this might be it. We're looking at each other. I love you. I love you. And we're all going to face that moment in our life. And you know what I felt in that moment? gratitude. I wasn't afraid. I didn't have any regrets. I remember sitting there consciously thinking, wow, I really hoped I was going to have more. There was a lot more I wanted to do. But if this is all I get, thank you. And that's why you want to do this stuff, because you want to get to the end of your life and know that like you don't have regrets. I wish I'd have done this, or I wish I'd have done that. And then actually it was after that time that year, I realized there was one little regret. And that was that I had been kind of playing it safe with the teaching. I was just putting out free content on YouTube in my spare time as a passion project, not really trying to monetize it, but realizing if I really wanted to have impact on people, then I needed to do this full time, and I needed to get over my myself. I have YouTube videos where I've said way back, like, I'll never charge people for my teaching because I'll make my money off my rich clients, and I'll just give away my stuff for free. And then luckily I had some friends tell me, you're being selfish. It's like, yeah, it sounds very noble, but how much more impact could you have if you were to put all of your resources, all of your time, all of the money into it, everything that's required to reach as many people as possible? And I kind of went, okay, I guess I'm okay then with charging for what I
But it
do.
does, you know what it does? You're also killing another piece of yourself with that scarcity mindset.
Oh,
Each
totally.
time
Yeah.
you do that, you're telling yourself you are worth it.
Yeah.
You are valuable enough. It's
Yeah.
it's really this internal battle
Oh, for
of
sure.
saying that I remember where I came from and I want to support all those people. I had a conversation with someone this past weekend. I was kind of mentoring in the future and the next iteration of their life. And I said, listen, I've heard you say 3 times that they are like this, or I'm not like them, or there are things that they do that I'm not doing. And I said, you keep building this wall between you and the rest of the successful people, and this wall's got to come down. You got to remind yourself that you are exactly the person to help more people, and it starts with you.
Yeah.
But there was this boundary of these excuses that we're talking about, that there's no logical to that. That
No.
is all excuse. It's all BS. And once you crush it and you break free, you saw how many people you could actually support and help. You saw how many more people you could teach by
And
actually turning a larger profit.
it was like you said with your dad, it's like, well, it's never enough for you, is it? It's like, no, because each thing just leads to something else that you go, well, I can do this too, or I can do that too, right? And again, I'm totally on with you that, like, you know, that kind of mindset, that there really is nothing, I don't think, that is as rewarding emotionally as helping change other people's lives for the better. And when you can do that, and if you can do it at scale, and like, that's better than making more money, than having a brand new car or a bigger house, or like, once you, and the other thing too is, like, once you have enough, right? Like, it's like, if I made 10 times as much money next year as I made this year, or I could change 10 people's lives, the only one of those things that is really going to impact me in any significant way is changing 10 people's lives. Because once you have enough money to live the life you're comfortable with, well, more money is, you know, what does that do for you? It
Well,
just
you're
zeroes in your
leading me
bank
you're
account.
leading me into the next one, which is, why is the brain so comfortable with good enough? So good
Yeah.
isn't good enough until it hurts.
Yeah.
So if good isn't good enough until it hurts, why do we see so much sabotage on progress? What are some of the things that, when you think about that, in order to get where you were, you had to break these barriers, and then you get to a level where you have to decide. It's a new comfort level, right?
Yep.
You have to decide, is good enough, or are you pushing past or through that?
Yeah. And good enough is not even close to being good enough. Especially if you want to make a living in doing something that people do for a hobby, right? Good enough is good enough if you're doing people's income taxes. right? Because people need someone to do their income tax, and there's a huge demand for that. Good enough as if you're just, if you have a landscaping business and you cut people's grass, because people aren't going around offering to cut people's grass for free. Whereas there are all kinds of artists out there giving their work away. There's all kinds of artists out there selling their work for very, very little price. So why would someone pay thousands of dollars for your art? And it's just like golf, right? Like good enough is good enough to go out and play and not embarrass yourself and maybe do okay in your local club's kind of championships or whatever. But good enough isn't good enough to make a living. As a golfer, you've got to be great. And here's the thing that most people I don't think realize is that for the most part, unless it's things where you're limited physically, if you have a passion for something, and by passion, I mean not just you love doing the thing, but where you have an overwhelming, burning desire to master everything about it, right? That's the level of passion that you need. You can't just, I love golf. I've been golfing for 60 years. I'm still an 18 handicap because I don't have a burning desire to get better. I was okay with good enough. But with art, I have this overwhelming, burning desire to learn everything I could about it. And then the business of being an artist, and then everything that's kind of come on from there. But the good news is if you have that passion, great is attainable. It is just totally up to you. But the problem with a lot of artists, and I think a lot of people, they stop at good enough where they start getting okay results, right? They get a few sales here and there. Um, and then they shift into, okay, well, now I'm going to spend the rest of my time trying to market this nice work, right? Instead of saying, no, no, like it was a lot of work to get to just good. It takes less work to get to great, but you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing, and then eventually you'll get there. And when you're great, and again, I define great. I live in the village of commercial sales. I call it that. So that's where actual real people buy artists' work to hang on their walls in their home or in their office. So whether through galleries, through art festivals, online, whatever. But I say in that world, we judge great by not by a critic, not by kind of a professor, but by the art buying public's reaction to it, right? If the more people that love your work and love it to the degree they actually make poor choices financially when they shouldn't be buying your work and they actually spend money on it because they just have to have it, that's what we define as great work in the world of commercial sales. And once you get to that point where you can consistently create work where like you love the process, you love the work, and enough of the public loves the work, making a living is actually easy. But most artists stop. They stop developing and they stop at that what they think, oh, good enough. I'm as good as most. I'm better than most of these artists here, right?
Yeah,
So it
they're setting the bar lower
yes.
than they should, and the key is once you know better exists,
Yep.
for me, it's always been difficult to settle. So, I mean, if I go to a great restaurant and the food's amazing and the service is very good, and then I go into the bathroom and it's sloppy and it's
Yeah.
not put together, or there's not the special urinal traps that don't
Yeah.
splash back at
Yeah.
you, or like these little
Yeah.
things that to me,
Yeah.
why am I at a top tier restaurant where we aren't thinking of all the little details? Because
Yeah.
somebody in that restaurant said, "Oh, it's good enough."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a weakness to get to great
Yeah.
when it's serving other people. And you're talking about delivering art. You're talking about developing something that you love and then having you want other people to love it. Well, if you love it so much when you're putting it out there, it's a whole lot more likely to get to that next level where other people are loving it as well. But if you're just doing what you know is going through the motions, it's going to be a lot harder, I would imagine, to create the same level of love on the external.
Well, and not only that, the reason, like I say to artists, because there's this whole thing in the arts too, right? If you're talking about money and success, well, you're selling out. It's like, really? is Tiger Woods selling out? Is anyone who's an actor who's famous, and are they selling out because they're making a good living from doing what they're doing? It's like, but artists have this funny thing about, oh, we shouldn't talk about money. And it's like, that's why you're all starving, right? It's like, no, we need to talk about money. But and so I'm always saying to people, you want to find that sweet spot again, where you love the work, you love the process, and enough people love it. But the other reason that you need to love it is when you become popular and people want it, you're going to be expected to do a lot of it. So you better love it. And I actually had that happen with me when I left the police force. I was a high realism portrait painter. And initially, I just loved painting people, painting them the way I like to paint them. And then I started doing portraits for friends and family, but where I still had a lot of latitude. Well, then when I made it a business and full time and moved into it, now all of a sudden the client is having much more impact. And now I'm painting pictures they want me to paint of their people the way they want me to paint them. And 2 years after leaving the police force, it's like, "Oh my god, I hate my job now."
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't do that because I hate it, and I just couldn't have kept doing it. So it's like, "Okay, well, now I need to find, okay, what is it that I have to say that where I can love the work and people will love it as well." And so that took on another, like, 3 or 4-year journey till my current voice, came about. But I always say to people, like, no, don't follow down a path just because that's something that comes easy to you or maybe that people like if you don't love it, because the passion and the love will trump that over time. And at a certain point, you end up just trading one other job for another job. And this is, this adventure of going on to try to follow your dream and make your own business and be an entrepreneur and all that, it's only worth it if you end up loving what you're doing. If you end up not liking it, there's a lot of easier ways to make money doing something you don't like,
Yeah, and by
right?
the way, if you're selling out in I'm using air quotes for those
Yeah,
listening, if you're selling out, but you love what you're doing, this term of selling out is just weakness and utter, um, envy. People
yeah,
that
I think
talk
so.
about selling out
Yeah,
are just envious that they haven't made it yet and they don't see themselves as ever making it. But
yeah,
if you see yourself as something, I've talked to lots of professional athletes and Navy SEALs and people that have done whatever they do at the highest level, right?
yeah,
They don't ever walk into the room and not think that they can at least compete
yeah,
if they don't even think that they might be the best in the room no matter what. They walk into the room and they say, I am the best at this, regardless of what anyone else thinks, because they're going to give their best. They're going to put their best effort. Selling out is I know in the art world,
yeah.
it's like in music. I saw a video this past week of a band, the Mighty Mighty Bosstones. They were big in the '90s and early 2000s, and
I love them.
yeah,
I
I
love
love the Boston.
them.
I loved them too when they
Yeah,
came out. I love the horns and the
yeah,
style. They
yeah,
had the guy that just danced on the
yeah,
stage, and his only job was to dance, and he was like a brother-in-law of
yeah,
somebody. And they did the Conan O'Brien show, or one of the it might have been Saturday Night Live, but I don't think it was. It was another show that was
yeah.
similar, and they the lead singer was rumored to really battle because he felt like he was selling out, and the punk scene would no longer think that he was cool.
Yeah,
And, because they were never discovered, like,
yeah.
they did this for, like, 20 years and
That's
nobody knew who
that's
they
the
were.
impression that I get. That's their
Yeah.
song, right? I love
Yeah.
that song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, and it was I saw them in college. When I was in college, they came to a small, spot, and, it was a great show, but the interesting part is a lot of musical artists battle with this because when
Yeah,
they made it, they never saw themselves maybe where they are today,
yeah,
and so lots of people struggle with this. This is not just an artist problem. In the
yeah.
business world, you hit a new level and some of your friendships change.
I
Some of your
when
relationships. This is challenging for a lot of people.
I remember when I first really hit success and things started taking off, and you could see that, okay, this was going to become a big thing. And one of my friends who was a mentor for me, she said, Timmy, not everybody's going to be happy for you, just so you know. Right. But the other thing that I love, and actually that, you know, the other thing I would say with those people that you said when they walk in, they think they might be the best or are the best, believe the best, whatever. But they're also not threatened by anyone else's success and they're
Right.
happy for them, right? It's the ability when you see someone else have something really, really good happen or achieve something that's maybe a little ahead of where you were, or something wanted, you have a choice, right? You can let the green-eyed monster kind of raise up and you can let it be a sting and you can react negatively, or you can go, well, good for them because if they can do it, I can do it, right? I remember there was one young artist in the Toronto area back when after I just left the police force, and he was doing these art festivals, and he got all these sold stickers up, and it was like, and you go, if this is right, he's like selling $10,000 a weekend on these festivals. And what was so funny is so many other artists that I knew, they didn't believe it was happening. They thought, I think he's just putting stickers up to kind of, draw sales, or I don't know, whatever. But they didn't want it to be true.
Right.
And I'm like, I want this to be true with my whole heart and soul, because I want to know that somebody is making this kind of money as an artist, because if someone can, I can, right?
Yep.
And so that's that whole thing. When you see someone else's success, like don't let it be the sting, let it be a spark. Let it just go, okay, well, yeah, look at what they're doing. I guess that's what I can do.
Yeah, I had Jim Murphy on the show who wrote a book called Inner Excellence. It's a very popular, mental uh, mindset book and phenomenal for athletes especially. And we talked about this on the show where, it was like I don't ever remember playing a game where I didn't look at the other person as the enemy. It was not one of those things where I was
Yeah,
I was not equipped early on, but I have 2 sons who play high level soccer, and they both are friendly with the other team. They
yeah,
both are competing at the highest level, but they admire success, and I had to break through something that was a psychological holdback for me. It was that scarcity mindset, like there
yeah,
wasn't enough in the world, and so breaking through that and then teaching my children the right way was
yeah,
something that was really, really important. And, it kind of leads me to the one of the next things is that what mental wall stops artists from sharing or selling their work? So I wrote, selling or sharing your work is a psychological barrier. Talk to
yeah,
me about this. I think we just led into this
yeah.
conversation already, but what have we not said about the psychological barrier that so many creatives find themselves in?
Well, I think part of it is that that feeling that somehow that selling your work or marketing your work somehow diminishes the integrity of the work. And I don't believe that for a minute. I believe the work is the work. And it doesn't diminish the integrity of the work for you to be very successful and get a lot of money for your work, or make prints of your work or whatever. There's nothing noble about starving in a garret. And people often, they use the Vincent Van Gogh, and it's like, he killed himself, right?
Right.
His life was so miserable
Miserable.
that he killed himself, and the art was amazing. And has the value of that art been diminished because now he's everywhere, right? Vincent Van Gogh, everybody in the world knows Vincent Van Gogh. Wouldn't it have been better if he had been able to actually reap some of those rewards while he was alive? So there's that whole thing. And then there's the other thing too with artists. It's like they don't want to be judged. When you put your work up for sale, you're putting it up to be judged, right? And that can be scary for a lot of people. But the thing you have to realize is nobody starts good at this. And if you want to make there's that whole thing, like art can be a wonderful hobby. It doesn't have to be a profession, right? It can be a wonderful hobby, just like golf is for me. The problem, I think, is we have a lot of people who kind of feel about art the way I feel about golf, but they expect the world to give them a living from doing it, right? From just playing like a 10 handicapper or 20 handicapper. And it's like, well, the world's not going to reward you for that. Like if you want to play golf, you got to shoot below
Go
par,
go
right?
all in.
Yeah.
Go all in on it. If you wanna be paid for something, go all in. This is my big challenge with so many people in social media today. They wanna coach you or teach you on all kinds of things, but they're not willing to go out and do it all the way. They just want to tell you what it's like or give you one small thing that they've done. I want you to go all in.
Yeah, you
And when
have
you
to go
go in,
all
I'm going
in.
to follow you because
Yeah.
that sounds so much more interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you can't do it half-assed, right? You
Right.
can't do good enough, you can't even do really good, and the other thing that people don't take into account is who is their competition, right? In terms of when do you think, "Is my work at that highest level?" And with artists, often, they're like I had one of the ladies in my program, and so we had a meeting, and she was saying, "Well, what do you think, I should work on?" And I said, "Well, the two big things for any artist, I think, are drawing ability and composition. The way we, just like in music, it's exactly the same, right? You can have a beautiful song and kindergarten kids can sing it and it's beautiful. And you can have a horribly written song and Michael Bublé can't sing it good. So it's the composition is really important. So I said to her, I think you really need to work on improving your drawing and your composition skills. And once you've mastered those, then we can go on to kind of looking for you to find your own unique voice. And she said, "Well, I think I've already mastered drawing and composition." It's like, okay, this is going to be a difficult conversation. So I said, okay, let's put some of your pieces up on the screen, right? And so there was a figurative piece, and it's like, and the thing I love about like drawing, right, is and why life drawing is so important is anybody can recognize if there's a drawing and it's like, there's something wonky with the eye or the hands are a little funny, like anyone can recognize that. And there was a lot of wonky stuff going on with her drawings. And then there was a lot of really bad compositional decisions made. And so I kind of pointed that out. And I said, what made you think that you'd mastered it? She said, well, I think I'm better than most of the people in my art group. And it's like, they're not your competition. I'm your competition,
Right.
right? If you want to be a professional golfer, the club champ at your local golf course is not the competition. Your competition, Scotty Scheffler,
Yeah.
right? So
Well, it
that's what
does
you
you
need to aim for.
it does you no good to be the best in your community or the best in
No,
in your area. You have to constantly be leveling up. And so
and then
again, as you're leveling up, what you're doing is you're evaluating. It's almost like my youngest son is playing academy level soccer for DC United, and he loves what he does, and he's 16 and he's playing on the U18 U19 team because that's the age group that
yeah,
he's in right now. um but there is a you have to be the best in your academy, and you have to be the best in the academies, and you have to be, in order to become a pro, you
yeah.
have to keep leveling up.
So you're
And
national, right? You're
right, and
playing on the national team as
and
a
each
teenager.
time you
Yeah.
level up, you actually start to see games moving faster.
Yep.
It's a little
Yep.
harder. Oh,
Yep.
there's a national level. Every time I play a national player, there's a speed differential. Like, these are little things that you start to see, but it's all about getting uncomfortable for the short time
Yeah.
so you can actually level yourself up. And so what she was doing was she was comfortable with where she was
Oh,
at
for
and
sure.
felt like she had mastered it.
Yeah, for sure. But then just realize again, it's like if you're just the best centerman in your local men's old timer hockey league,
Yeah,
you're not getting a call to come up to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs,
you're
right? But
not.
but the problem with a lot of artists is they think that and the other thing that they've heard a little bit about Malcolm Gladwell and the 10,000 hours and
Yeah,
all
so they
that,
just
and
put in the
uh,
hours thinking they're
yeah,
gonna
but
automatically be
but
great.
they've put in but it's 10,000 hours towards improving. It's not like me, I got more than 10,000 hours of playing mediocre golf. I'm just really good at going out there and playing mediocre golf, right? There's young guys that it kinda drives me crazy sometimes because 'cause I've been golfing my whole life. I work a little bit to try and improve a bit, but we've got young kids that we were playing with last year, one of the junior members, he's only been golfing for 2 years. And he beats me by 15 strokes, right? But he spent 2 years intensely focused on improving every aspect of the game, and that's what it takes.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
it's a different mindset. I think when you're aiming towards the next chapter, this is something that happens to a lot of people. It's frustration. And you often say frustration equals misalignment, not failure. So, what if your frustration isn't a dead end? It might actually be a signal that something better is happening.
Well, frustration too can come about. Frustration comes about when the what happens in reality doesn't meet our expectations, right? So, and with artists, here's the thing here's why a lot of artists get stuck and don't grow, because it's like, so there's three different modes of creating. There's practice, process, and product. And that's actually the same in anything. Either you're learning how to shoot videos or do social media, whatever. And we all know what practice is. That's where, if you're doing life drawing lessons or you're doing a sketchbook, or for golf, you're on the driving range hitting the balls, you're just trying to improve the skills. And then there's product, which is like for an artist when you're just trying to create the best painting you can paint. And you're just relying on the skills, knowledge, the competencies that you're competent and confident in. And when you do that, you should hit kind of the same level. It's just like me, when I go out and play golf, I should shoot around my cap most of the time, right? Um, but I'll never get better if that's all I'm doing. So to get better, you got to step outside your comfort zone, and you've got to push yourself. And and that's process. Process is when you're trying something you've never done before. You're trying to push the envelope. But what happens often is when we do something that we don't know what we're doing, it doesn't turn out and it fails. And then we get frustrated because, oh, I was really hoping this would turn out. And then they scurry back to their comfort zone. And then they try again something else. It doesn't work out. Now they're frustrated, back to their comfort zone. Now, just the thought of stepping outside of their comfort zone, now the fear of failure perks up because they're like, well, every time I do this, it doesn't work out well. Then the lizard brain kicks in. And then that's where you get painter's block, right? Or writer's block. And the whole thing to understand is that failure is not something to be avoided. Failure is something that you need to do. You just need to be smart about what that failure is going to cost you. And if it's just a piece of paper, right? Like, so if you're trying something you've never done before, you're in process mode, the very first thing you need to do is give permission for the painting to fail. That way, when you go and try the new thing, maybe it's like, this is the first time I've ever painted in watercolor, right? Well, I'm going to go and try and do it. If you have expectations that it's going to turn out like a Zoltan Zabo, I guarantee you're going to be frustrated. But if your goal is, I'm just going to do it, and if it's a dog's breakfast, that was it, mission accomplished, because then you're never going to be afraid of stepping inside of process mode. But every time you step in process mode, what are you doing? You're building new skills, you're building new experiences, you're pushing your creativity, and you're growing your knowledge. And that's the building blocks of talent. And then sometimes in process mode, when we're outside of our comfort zone, that's when breakthroughs happen. That's when maybe you create a painting better than anything you've ever done before. And now guess what? Your product level has just gone up. I love, I think Goggins is the one, he says that no one ever had a breakthrough in the comfort zone, right?
Right.
Just
Well,
doesn't happen.
I think failure is one of those things that I really embrace
Yeah.
over time, and it also comes, I think, creative energy and having some level of creative ideas has to live close to failure because you
Yes.
have to be trying something different. You have to be willing to try something unique, something that other people aren't doing. And maybe they're doing it, but they're not doing it the way you're doing it, and your
Yeah.
flavor or your ideas become so unique. Maybe it's a painting and it's an art thing. Maybe it's the fact that in most of our sports that we see, the average baseball player, if they're batting over 300, they're doing pretty darn good.
Yeah.
If an NBA player is shooting 33% from the 3-point line, they're really good at 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
Like, this is the key. You miss so many things trying to attain a higher level. But when you're unafraid to fail
Yeah.
and you embrace it as being closer, I look at something as simple as when I started in business, I knocked on doors. And every time I would knock on doors, I hated it. I didn't enjoy it. I hated it. It was rough. But here's the thing. I would tell myself that each no I got, I was closer to a yes.
Yeah.
And it always worked that way. And when I
Yeah.
said yes, I was only knocking to introduce myself and create a next level. But if folks, if you've never knocked on doors to build a
Cold calling.
business, cold calling. I cold called. I mean, we did all these things because this was the way that it was starting from scratch, from ground zero.
Yeah.
The reality is every no was closer to a
Yeah.
yes.
It's like the 10 crappy pages, right? I
Yeah, it's
heard
10
someone
crappy
talk about
pages.
that too. His thing was, "I wanna get the first 30 no's as quick as possible," because that was the goal. Get me to my 30 no's, because I know there's gonna be a yes in there somewhere or in the next 30. But if you're afraid of the no's, then you're not gonna be eagerly walking up, knocking on the door, right? And it's like, "Oh, no number 15. I know that yes is closer now," right?
Well, I think this is a great topic. Just a brief elaboration in that there's a lot of young people today that are more and more afraid of putting themselves out
Yep.
there. They put a version of themselves out there. They put the Instagram and TikTok and YouTube version of themselves, but that's not who they are. And so they're less likely to approach a new relationship or a young woman or young man. They're unwilling to be who they are out in public. There's a lot of hiding, and I think that when you look at that kind of that's a major fear of failure. And
Yes.
that's where fearing failure is not only holding them back in their careers, it's holding them back in their lives. And so these things, these mindset commonalities are not just things that help you be better, in your case in art, in my case in business or in podcasting. It's it's things that will help you live a better life.
And yeah, because you don't I forget, one of your guests I listened this morning said something about that, that once you, instead of avoiding discomfort, welcome discomfort and learn to live in the uncertainty. And then, because that's what scares us, right? When we're going into a situation, it's like, oh, I don't feel comfortable. And so the lizard brain kind of kicks up and you get the sweats and all that. But when you're comfortable being uncomfortable, then that also builds that confidence that, oh, I can handle it. That was the whole thing with the Navy SEAL. They were looking at the guys who performed best when things were falling down around them, right? If you can learn to navigate and be comfortable when you're not certain of the outcome, when you're not sure if these people are judging me or do they like me or don't like me, all of these thoughts that kind of go through our head. When you're comfortable with that and it doesn't make you uncomfortable anymore, then life gets a lot easier. You experience a lot less stress. And that was the thing I loved about that particular guest. That, yeah, like the more you kind of just cater or kind of cultivate this and bring it into your life and be comfortable dealing with it, the less everything bothers you.
We're
It's
we're
just,
made we're made for that. We're
yeah,
made to be uncomfortable. We're made to carry crosses. We
yep,
are made to have a little bit of challenge. The problem in today's world is that we're so used to making excuses over the minor things that are holding us back that we're not able to break through. And on the other side of that anxiety, on the other side of that challenge, on the other side of the discomfort that we're talking about right now, is what it feels like when you conquer something, when you're
yeah,
successful. When I used to take shots, I love soccer. I played a lot of soccer, but I practiced basketball all the time. And I would stand under the rim with my left hand and I would just pop up short shots with my left hand, which was my offhand. And then before I went in, I would say, okay, and a lot of kids listening to this, a lot of grown men probably and women, but a lot of grown men listening to this going, I did this. But I would say I'm going to make 10 straight shots before I go in. There were times where it took me an hour to hit it.
yeah,
Maybe it was
yeah,
cold, I was tired, my legs were tired, but I kept going. And what I was
yeah.
doing was building a skill that was going to help me later in life when I hit turbulence, when I
Yeah.
had challenges, because it's reciprocal to anything we're doing.
And the other thing too is that because of our evolution and stuff, like when we were way back in history, when you had that uncomfortable feeling, it might be because you vaguely heard a lion's roar in the distance, right?
Yeah.
But things that made you uncomfortable, a lot of times there was real jeopardy. So that's why the fight or flight response kicks in, the sweat and all that kind of stuff. But now it's like public speaking. That's probably the most common thing that most people are afraid of, is public speaking. But what's the jeopardy? Like, we've all seen someone bomb at a wedding speech or whatever. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Other people get a little uncomfortable. They feel empathy for the person and kind of, but nothing happens. Nothing bad happens, right? Like, that used to kill me when I was on the police force, that there would be guys like that. The same sort of thing is like, oh, the inspector wants to see you. Someone gets called in to see the inspector. Oh, these big tough guys that would be not afraid to go down the dark alley because there's a man with a knife down there or whatever, they would turn into a puddle because they're getting called in to see the inspector and they're afraid that, oh, maybe this, it's like, what's going to happen? You just faced like life threatening situations over here. But that's the things that make us feel uncomfortable nowadays. There's no jeopardy. It's like, oh, what if people give me bad comments on social media? Right. It's like, well, yeah, they're gonna, it doesn't matter who you are, they're gonna, but really it doesn't impact you. And I like to think about too, because that's the big thing when you talk about, I think that's why kids nowadays too are so afraid of judgment, is the whole social media thing
Yeah, it's
and all
amplified.
that.
It's amplified.
But
Yes.
I like to think, I like the idea, and I think this was from Gary Vaynerchuk, but it's like, just imagine who's there that, they're deciding they're going to take time out of their day to try and ruin this person's day, right? That's a broken person. That's a sad person. And so when you see those kinds of comments, when people make comments like that, instead of getting all upset or getting angry, like, feel sorry for them. Think, how bad a situation do they have to be in, that that's how they get pleasure out of their day, going in and trying to ruin someone else who's trying to do something positive, right? And when you frame it that way, it's like, it doesn't sting. It still stings. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I get, some of my posts where I just reveal a painting, I might get like 1,000 comments, but then there's one that's goes, "Oh, that's garbage," and it still stings a little bit, but it's like you just realize, never, no one's going to you're never going to have everyone love what you do. I'm sure there's some people who don't like Adele, right?
Right.
Like, it's kind of like,
Yeah,
but
what I notice about the haters, especially on social media, is how many of them have burner accounts.
yeah,
So many times when I read negative comments, they're fake names,
yeah,
fake accounts, burner accounts. These people make their lives work around hating and
yeah.
hazing other people.
But
Why
they
would
never
I
do
ever
anything
care?
themselves,
Right.
right?
Because
And that's the Teddy Roosevelt quote. I love that. I will not be judged by someone who has not stepped into the arena,
Right, I love the man in
right?
the arena.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
It's one of those things where, look, I don't think it's worth being judged at all. If you're out there doing it, you mentioned public speaking. I've done so many public speaking events, right? And what I've learned is sometimes I've done the most mediocre of jobs. I've gotten
mhm,
up and I've done an announcement for a Rotary Club, or I've done something, and I've given checks away for charity on the wine festival we run or something, and people will come up to me and they say, "Oh, you did such an amazing job." And I know right out of the gate that that person hates public speaking.
yeah,
What their bar, we said this earlier, their bar was so low. It was that when you stand up in front of the room, you have exceeded the very bar that
yeah,
anybody has ever seen.
yeah,
And so I think it's good to remember that so many people are so uncomfortable with these things that when you just cross the boundary and do it,
yeah.
it really does make a big difference. I have a couple more I wanna
Sure.
talk to you about. So, did you have to let go of who you thought you were to keep growing? So the other truth I found as a consistent commonality in your work was creative identity gets harder to maintain over time. So why do you think that is, and what are some of the reasons behind that creative energy, and what did you do to overcome that?
Yeah, I think we tell ourselves stories about who we are and what we are, and then those become prisons almost into that. Well, I guess that's who I am, right? And so, I mean, that happened early on with me. My brother was an engineer, and I was the creative one. So it was like, well, he's the guy that does smart at tech. Tim's not good at tech. Tim's good at creative, right? And I kind of accepted that.
You start to believe it.
started to believe it. And then when I was on the police force, I got a chance to, when I was in the fraud school, I got a chance to go to the RCMP college to take their month long computer crime course. And this was in 96, 97. So that was pretty advanced training. I did not even know how to load a floppy disk. I was terrified of computers. Computers were just coming in to being in the police force. And there was like one guy on every shift that maybe knew a little bit about computers.
There's
And
people in listening to this that have no idea what a floppy
oh,
disk
I
even
know.
is, by the
Yeah.
way. So
Yeah.
look it up, Google it. You'll see a picture.
And
Ki
DOS, right? We actually had to
Yeah,
type
I know.
commands in.
I had intro
But
to email in
uh,
99 in college, and I remember
okay.
or no, 96, excuse me, and I
So
remember going it was a flashing green dot on
yeah,
a black screen.
yeah. So we had to. So one guy in our office who was good at computers was going to be going on the course, and then his daughter ended up. I think her wedding was planned or something, so he couldn't do it, and so we had the slot, and so headquarters said, "Well, is there anyone else in your office that can go?" Um, and he said to me, "Tim, do you want to go?" I said, "I don't know nothing about computers." And he said, "I can teach you. You got 3 weeks because there was an incoming exam coming in as well, right?" So it's like, and this was, you had to know DOS, you had to know DBase 4, Lotus 123, and Word Perfect. And there was an incoming exam the first day, and if you didn't pass, you were sent home. And so, anyways, I crammed, and then I ended up having, Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was his business initially. He had these little floppy disks of learn DBase 3, learn Lotus 123. So I was able to get time off from work. I went to my brother's house because he was an engineer. He had a computer, and I was able to spend the time there just going through all these tutorials. I ended up getting there. I still remember the very first day they gave us like a brief. First of all, we all had to get up and introduce ourselves. So I'm not comfortable in this room at all. We got guys standing up saying, "Oh, my very first computer was an Apple IIe, and now I'm on my second. I have my master's in computer science." And these are all detectives as well. And the guy beside me, he was a staff sergeant from London, and he's like, "I have my master's in computer science, and I've been, and I stand up and said, "I learned how to load a floppy disk 2 weeks ago, and I have just been cramming like crazy to pass the entrance exam." But it's like, I'm just thrilled to be here, but I'm not in your guys' league. And then the very first class we had was a brief history of computers. And halfway through a brief history of computers, Sandy, the fellow next to me, leans over to me and says, "That, in a nutshell, is my master's degree. All of this is new to me going forward as well." And then I ended up completing the course, and I ended up getting the second highest mark in on the exam. And that for me, that experience is what led me to believe I could make it as an artist, because I thought this is something I'm not good
Good
at.
at.
This was
It's
not something
in
that
your
it was
brain.
like, oh yeah. But I'd worked harder at that course. I worked harder than I'd ever worked at any sort of like school type thing, right? And I just really, really wanted to do well there. And that's when I thought, well, if I can do that well, it's something that I don't have a natural aptitude for. What about this art thing, which is the thing I love more than anything else in the world? Um, and so yeah, but
You
then
could build off of it.
I got into portraits. So then it was like, and then I was elected as a senior signature member of the Canadian Institute of Portrait Artists, and I got into the Canadian Watercolor Society based on my portraits. I was winning lots of awards. So now the new label is portrait painter, right? Even when it started to reach a point that I don't want to be a portrait painter
Yeah. Well, because
anymore.
you wanted to you outgrow it. You
Exactly.
outgrow it to some extent, but you also are breaking the old identity.
Yeah.
I was talking to a doctor earlier today, specializes in trauma, is a good friend of mine, and he said, pre I think 5 years old, kids are very literal, and
Hmm.
so if you tell a kid, listen, you're stupid. You can't do these things. If you say these things as a parent, and
Yeah.
I'm being very harsh with the
No, that's
words,
true.
but I'm just
People
saying
people believe that.
they actually grow up believing that and sometimes never break free.
Yeah.
Now, he teaches parents how to break that and to help their children break free from that literal lack of belief in themselves
Yeah.
based on statements that came out very adult
Yeah.
like, "Don't be dumb, don't be stupid, what are you doing?" And these are things that are very literal, but many of us go through early adulthood with these limitations. of our identity, and we have to break free of it.
Yeah.
And once you do, I remember getting straight A's for the first time in college. I was never a straight A student. Now I've read James Clear's Atomic Habits, and what I love about it is, I once I got straight A's, I told myself I'm the kind of guy that gets
Get
straight
straight
A's,
A's. And guess
and
what?
I
You
always
get
got
straight
straight A's
A's.
from then on out.
Yeah.
That was it.
That's it.
And it was that simple. And when I was on the cusp of not getting an A, I found myself in the teacher's office talking to him or her and saying, "Hey, what do I need to do to get an A? I want to have
Yeah.
straight A's." And they would give me anything to get there.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is, once you identify with who you're meant to be, not who you thought you were,
Yeah.
so much in your life can change. All right, I've got one last one. We'll kind of wrap it up, and that is, I know that many artists replace passion with justification. I've seen you say this. What's the most common justification that you see creatives use to explain why they're not progressing? So, what mindset is one of the most common things that we see when they're struggling to sell, misunderstanding growth? Like, what do you see that stands out there?
The biggest thing is they give way too much credit and way too much blame on external things that they don't control, right? It's like, well, the world doesn't appreciate art. Oh, Instagram's algorithm just doesn't, is out to get me or whatever. Or you need to be born into the right family with the right
Yeah,
connections.
we've
You
all
needed
heard
to go
that.
to the right school, right? I don't know anybody in the art world. And well, you're lucky. Like they believe that their success is dependent on external circumstances that they weren't fortunate enough to get, rather than believing that their success is 100% in their power. They are 100% in charge of their success. But the very first thing you have to do is actually believe that. But you're also 100% for the failures, responsible for the failures. And there's going
Yeah,
to be failures. And you have to be, that's why I say that courage is a huge part of it, because it takes courage to be willing to fail, especially fail publicly, which sometimes is a necessary part of growth. And so, I mean, that's the biggest thing that I see limiting, is that they believe that there are external factors that are the reason why they're not being successful. And then that's easy to just then kind of blame, right? Blame the world, blame society, blame Instagram's algorithm, whatever, or blame their circumstances, or be envious of other people's circumstances. But once you know two things, that whole idea of abundance, that there's enough for everyone,
yeah,
and you're and now that, like, there was a time when a lot of this stuff was right, because if you didn't have access to the right information, the right sort of training, learning, all that kind of stuff, that was a real hindrance.
it's
It's at
all
your
free.
fingertips
It's
now.
all
It's
free
it's
now.
everywhere. It's on YouTube, these kind of podcasts, kind of whatever. Like, you don't need to go to university anymore. You don't need to have the money to do that. But I think that's the biggest thing that limits people in their growth, is that, or they think that, again, the whole Vincent van Gogh thing, right? They think that maybe I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and maybe sometime in the next 7 or 10 years, a person is gonna see my work and discover me, and then I'm gonna be incredibly famous. And so they're hoping for that. But what they don't get is that, like, the reason Van Gogh wasn't successful is he wasn't able to get his work in front of people,
Yeah,
right?
he certainly
That
wasn't aiming for famous.
No,
I
but
think these
no one
nobody
saw
aims for
his work.
famous.
But
Right.
now everybody sees your work. If you're on social media, if you're out doing art, people are seeing your work. If they're not responding, that's not it. So back in the studio, back in process mode. It's not like, well, maybe because a lot of us, maybe this is the year my work gets discovered. It's like, no, your work's already been discovered, and the reaction's been, eh. Right now, that's the reaction. So it's like, okay, we need to go in and work on our creativity, our skills, so we can get a better reaction. But the reaction's not going to magically change next year or 2 years or 3 years from now. If people are seeing your work and they're not having that over the top, I love it reaction, then you have an art problem. If what you want to do is make a living from your art, I mean, if people just want to paint as a hobby, then it really doesn't matter, right? It's like me as a golfer. It's like, I'm happy going. If I go out and shoot an 87, I'm thrilled. Anyone who's a good golfer would be throwing their clubs in the lake if they shot an 87. But, if that's what you want, that's fine. But again, I don't expect or hope or put myself out there to try and be making a living from my golf.
I
Um,
I think a lot of people find unhappiness in their lives because they'd rather be pursuing something like their art, but they're afraid to try it or they don't know that they can make a living. Now
yep,
you wrote a book called You Can Sell Your Art, and you just completed the launch,
yep,
and I want you to wrap us up by telling everybody that they can find it. It just hit Amazon bestseller and
yep,
right away in the first couple days. You've got it out there. So this is something people could do. There are creatives, and I think by reading this book, it's not just about art. This is mindset.
yep.
Mindset is the first chapter. So Tim, how do people find you? How do people follow you? And how do people read your book?
Okay, well, yeah, they can get the book on Amazon. So you just go on Amazon, just search "You Can Sell Your Art," and then I also have my online art academy. So that's at timpackerartacademy.com. And there's a couple levels there. I have a number of like recorded courses that people can purchase. And then I also have my mastermind group. I call it the Hungry Artists Community because I believe in being hungry. I don't believe in starving, but I also don't believe in being self satisfied and a fat cat. Like I'm always hungry for more, whether it's more learning, more impact, kind of more competence, whatever. It's just always be hungry. And in that program, that's like an annual subscription and they get all of my courses, but then I do this with them every week. We do a live Zoom call every week and I'll critique their work, I'll answer questions or offer coaching advice. And then they also get to be part of a community of other artists who are on this journey, who have that passion for art, and some of whom have actually already gone on to amazing success. And it's kind of like, oh, and the other thing I would say about mindset is the studies show that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Whatever that mindset level is, that's where you are. So if you can surround yourself with people in the growth mindset and ideally with people who not only have the mindset, but have gone on to show that it works, then that's just going to lift your mindset too. So
Well, Tim Packer, it's been a pleasure to listen to the connectivity between mindset and art. It's fun to have these conversations. We started this off by both of us saying how much we love talking about this stuff. So this
yeah,
is super easy, and I think people are going to listen to this, and it's uplifting. And if you're thinking about changing careers, if you're thinking about taking a risk, believing in yourself, putting the risk on yourself, the fear of failure can come and go, but if
yeah.
you believe in yourself and you put yourself out there and you're really, really into whatever it is that you want to accomplish, usually success will follow. And I think guys like Tim and I believe in you. So I'm grateful for you being on the show today.
Well,
Thank you
thanks
so
for having me. I
much.
love this conversation.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.